What would you do if you knew the place you call home could simply vanish from the map in just a few years?
Today I speak again from my country, from a small islet that is likely to be one of the first spots in Tuvalu to be submerged by rising sea levels.
There is a country so small you can barely spot it on a map unless you zoom way in. So narrow that in some places you can see the ocean on both sides of the road at the same time. A country where the airport runway turns into a public park, where almost no one visits, and where the most uncomfortable question isn't how do you get there, but rather how do you keep existing? I'm talking about Tuvalu, a small Pacific archipelago between Hawaii and Australia, the fourth smallest country in the world, with just 26 square kilometers of land, basically an entire nation that could fit inside a large international airport. In 2023, only around 3,000 tourists set foot there. To give you a sense of scale, Paris receives about 70 million people a year, and maybe that is exactly why life there feels so surreal, because the most impressive thing about this country isn't its size, it's the way it works. Come with me to discover Tuvalu. Arriving in Tuvalu already feels like going through a filter. There are no shortcuts, no connections through major global hubs. The only way in is through Fiji. Fiji Airways operates flights on small planes because Tuvalu's runway cannot handle anything much bigger. And a round trip for a flight of about 2.5 hours can cost between $700 and $1,300. When you land in Funafuti, the capital, it feels as if the infrastructure has been frozen in time. Your boarding pass may be handwritten at a wooden counter. There are no automated baggage carousels. And that is when you realize that in this country, even the airport works differently. The runway is the heart of Tuvalu. Since there is no space to spare, it is not just for planes. For 95% of the time, the asphalt becomes the city's park. At sunset, when the heat begins to ease, the runway turns into a football field, a volleyball court, a running track. Families have picnics in the exact same place where, just hours earlier, a plane had landed. And beyond the runway, the logic remains the same. Everything there revolves around the lack of space. Cars are rare, expensive to import, and difficult to maintain, used almost exclusively for government purposes. The standard form of transport for the 11,000 residents is motorbikes and scooters. Tuvalu is one of the narrowest and flattest countries in the world. The highest point in the entire nation is only 4.6 meters above sea level. In some parts of the main island, the land is only a few meters wide. You can stand in the middle of the road and see the ocean on both sides. But when a country is this small, this isolated, and this vulnerable, one question becomes inevitable. How does it sustain itself? For Tuvalu, the answer is on the internet. Tuvalu stumbled upon what many call a digital lottery ticket by sheer chance. In 1995, the organization responsible for domain names assigned each country a code. Tuvalu's became .tv. At the time, with 42% of the population working in fishing, no one imagined those two letters would one day be worth millions. Before it became a success, the government had to resort to far more controversial solutions. During the 1990s, Tuvalu rented out its international dialing code, 688, to phone sex companies. The country received a percentage of the profits, but this caused enormous discomfort in a predominantly Christian population. The .tv domain emerged as a much more acceptable alternative and a much more profitable one. Today, this extension is used by huge platforms like Twitch and the streaming service Pluto TV. Twitch alone pays around $5 million a year to use the domain. In 2021, GoDaddy took over its management and agreed to pay $10 million a year for the rights to .tv. For a country with a total GDP of just $63.1 million, that is colossal. The domain represents around 1/6 of Tuvalu's entire economy. That money helped the country pay the annual fee required to join the UN and finally be recognized as an independent nation. It also funded the construction of a school and brought electricity to more remote areas of the islands. It is an almost absurd contrast. A people who live from fishing, depend on imported goods to survive, and at the same time control one of the most valuable pieces of the global internet infrastructure. As for how residents connect to the internet, Starlink has, interestingly, gained ground in Tuvalu because, in a remote archipelago spread across 9 islands, providing traditional connectivity is far more expensive and much more difficult. But understanding Tuvalu goes far beyond the money coming in or the internet reaching its shores. What truly makes this country unique is the way its people live, organize themselves, and depend on one another. If you are a tourist, forget about credit cards. Tuvalu still runs almost entirely on cash. Until recently, there was not even a single ATM in the whole country. You had to arrive with Australian dollars in your backpack. Today, there are a few machines, but trust in paper money remains absolute. In Tuvalu, even the most basic things give you a sense of scarcity, as if the entire country were operating at the very limit of its space and infrastructure. There is one main market, a few small shops around it, a bank that concentrates the country's entire financial life, and a gas station so discreet, it almost looks improvised. In a place with so few entertainment options, even bingo nights and small community lotteries help keep social life moving, and maybe that fits the country's own logic. Tuvalu is a deeply communal society. There's a cultural concept in which you can adopt your best friend as a brother or sister. And it is not just a figure of speech. That person legally becomes part of your family. Future generations grow up in interconnected homes, raising children collectively. Even the prison system reflects this logic. Tuvalu's prison is open. There are no high walls or electrified fences. The few inmates leave during the day to work or carry out tasks, then return to sleep. The logic is simple. Where would anyone run to? It is an island in the middle of nowhere, where everyone knows everyone. But this entire image of peaceful community and simple living exists alongside an increasingly brutal pressure, because Tuvalu is not just an isolated place. It is a country that may be living through a countdown. This is where we get to the part many people avoid. Tuvalu is not merely a passive victim of nature. The country has turned the climate crisis into a powerful tool for visibility and fundraising. Its government is extremely vocal about the risk of submersion, attracting international donations and global aid funds. In 2021, then Prime Minister Simon Kofe went viral after delivering a speech to the UN with his legs submerged in the sea, in an image that said everything without needing to explain a thing. Time was running out. But behind the scenes, the crisis also became a negotiation over sovereignty. In 2025, Tuvalu signed an unprecedented immigration agreement with Australia. The pact states that Australia will permanently accept 280 residents per year. The spots are decided by lottery, and the desperation inside the country shows up in the numbers. In less than a month of applications, more than 5,100 people applied. That means nearly half of the country's entire population wanted to leave, desperately. But this agreement comes at a price. Critics, including former Prime Minister Aneli Sopoaga, have called the pact neo-colonialism or carbon colonialism. The reason is the controversial Article 4, which gives Australia veto power over Tuvalu's national security decisions. In practice, Australia is funding the people's survival and investing between $16 and $49 million in land reclamation in Funafuti in exchange for geopolitical influence over the region's waters and security. But, as shocking as that may sound, this is still not the most extreme part of the story. Faced with the real possibility of total submersion, Tuvalu is creating a digital backup of itself in the metaverse. The project aims to build an exact copy of every home, beach, and tree across its 9 islands. The first digitally preserved fatal victim is the island of Tuvalu, which has become the prototype for this virtual twin. And this is not just about preserving the beauty of the place. It is also a legal maneuver. Under international law, a nation needs a physical territory in order to be recognized as sovereign, something Tuvalu could lose by 2050. To try to get around that, the government is building 3 fronts at the same time. Digital passports on the blockchain to register births, marriages, and deaths outside the physical territory. Sovereignty in the cloud, a redefinition of statehood already incorporated into the local constitution in order to preserve fishing rights and ocean resource claims even without land. And a kind of digitization of the soul, in which citizens are sending memories, stories, and dance festivals so their culture can survive for future generations of refugees. The contradiction is brutal. While Tuvalu tries to move its soul into the cloud, the physical reality on the ground is marked by accumulated plastic waste, open-air garbage burning, and a lack of space even for sanitary landfills. Sea levels have risen 15 centimeters over 3 decades, and saltwater flooding is already making agriculture impossible and contaminating freshwater reserves. Tuvalu could become the first country in history to admit that it may survive without territory, a purely digital state where the dignity of its people is decided by migration lotteries and where national memory may end up depending on servers. Tuvalu is in a race against time. On one side, you see constant smiles, children playing, families gathered together, and people playing volleyball on an airport runway at sunset. On the other, you see a country trying to save its identity before the ocean swallows its geography. Maybe Tuvalu is the ultimate example of human resilience, or maybe it is a warning of what happens when an entire people has to learn how to keep existing before it has even disappeared. Had you ever heard of Tuvalu before? Would you travel there to see the wonders of this country? Leave your comment. You can find documentaries about the world's most beautiful and contradictory places right here on Complex Planet. So make sure to subscribe so you do not miss a new video whenever one comes out. I'll be back next week. See you then.